Good morning and welcome to Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. I'm so glad you're here today on this cool but wonderful day, beautiful day in my opinion. Special welcome to guests and visitors who are here with us. My name is Ben Hilding, my wife Alicia and I are two pastors and we love to work together and we love this church. So we're glad you're here to be a part of it today. This year at Holy Trinity we're doing a vision process, and it's a year-long intentional process where we learn about who we are and where we're going and what matters to us along the way. So we're in the second phase. We completed the looking backward phase. Now we're looking inward at this church and at ourselves, and in this next phase, this looking inward phase from now until a little after Christmas, we are going to be having a whole series of one-to-one conversations. So our prayers and our best are with those of you who are having those conversations. If you haven't had a chance to think about being a part of one, you got a couple months to do it. And as we're in this looking inward phase, and as we're having all these conversations, we were thinking, well, I wonder how we can kind of let that leak into worship a little bit. How can we have this looking inward conversation mode affect our worship experience? And so we thought, well, why don't we have dialogue sermons? And last announcement I'll say today is on this Veterans Day weekend, we give thanks and we honor those who have served our country and who have protected us by doing so. So I'd like to just invite any veterans who are in our midst to stand up, and let's give them a round of applause.
A reading from Hosea, the 11th chapter. When Israel was with a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more I called them, the more they went from me. They kept sacrificing the Baals and offering incense to idols. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness and with bands of love. I was to them like those who lift infants to their cheeks. I bent down to them and fed them. They shall return to the land of Egypt, and Assyria shall be their king. Because they refuse to return to me, the sword rages in their cities. It consumes their oracle priests and devours because of their schemes. My people are bent on turning away from me. To the Most High they call, but he does not raise them up at all. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand over, O Israel? How can I make you like Abam? How can I teach you like Zephon? My heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, for I am God, no mortal, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath. The word of the Lord.
All right. Well, felt like if we're going to do this conversation thing, making it feel like a living room, I couldn't wear my robe in the living room. It feels, I don't usually wear that at home too much. Well, Karen Taylor, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for asking me.
We're making this up as we go, so we're going to give this a try. And so Karen's our willing pioneer.
Victim.
Yeah, victim. Goodness sakes. So like I said, this looking inward phase of the vision process, we're hearing each other's stories. There's all these one-to-one conversations happening, and we hope that we can model that courage to listen and the courage to see how our stories overlap with each other's stories, but also with God's story by having it be a part of the worship service itself. So Karen's leading the charge here. So Karen, how about for those who don't know you, tell us about what you do here at Holy Trinity.
So I am the ministry coordinator. My job is to make you look good.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true.
I take care of worship teams. So Sunday and Wednesday, make sure that they are trained to do their jobs to make worship run smoothly. I also oversee all of the shared ministry events. So things like Rib Fest, the Christmas tea, trunk or treat. We've got a Thanksgiving dinner. I'm in charge of doing all the sign-up geniuses. I do a lot of marketing, so if you see flyers out on Facebook, that's me. So yeah, a lot of little things, just a lot of PR stuff for Holy Trinity.
You do a great job. And
Thank you.
absolutely.
This sermon's gonna go more than 10 minutes if you keep clapping, so. No more
We
clapping.
can make that happen, I think.
That's right, 10 minutes.
So, and then besides being involved here, you're involved in the community like crazy.
Yep,
In
yep.
what ways are you involved?
So I have another part-time job at the Fitness and Aquatic Center. I teach fitness classes, mainly Silver Sneakers and some yoga. And then I also do a little PR for them and fitness assistant, so I help people that join the gym. I help them get acquainted with the gym and all of that, so.
So just for kicks, who's in yoga? Who's in yoga
My
here
Silver
with Karen?
Sneakers, where are
Okay,
they?
yep, all right, yep, we got a few
Larry is one of my yogis,
Yep.
and then Mary, yep.
One of the yogis.
Dorothy
okay.
Jasperson used to come all the time, so yeah.
Great.
My
okay.
peeps.
So, Silver Sneakers, yoga.
And then I'm also the Scoutmaster for the Boy Scout troop here in town. So there's 33 boys that call me Mrs. Taylor every Monday night. And if you're here on Monday nights, you might see me in my uniform. So it's very, very busy.
You know how to keep everybody in line.
That's right, that's right.
We went on a youth gathering trip together to Texas, and I was marveling at Karen's ability to keep order in the chaos.
That's right, that's right.
But it probably needs to be said that your most important
Yes,
role.
it's my family. So my husband and I have been married for 24 years, and we have two boys, 19 and 16. My son is in the college, University of North Dakota, and then John is a junior at the high school here. So yeah, that's my babies. Although, they're not babies. Training them to be productive adults in society, so it's a big job.
You've done a great job with them. You've done a great job with them. So today, we are looking at some Bible passages. From now until Christmas, we're looking at prophets. And these are some passages that we don't always read in the sanctuary. We don't always read them and expound on them because sometimes they're a little tricky. But in some ways, Christians for centuries have interpreted prophets as pointing the way to Christ, and so it's common in Advent especially to focus on prophets. But then you get these funny books in there that you just, if you're to open up the Bible and you're to say, I'm just going to start reading the Bible, if you go somewhere to the middle, likely you'll go to a prophet, and likely it'll be confusing because there's words that are like, what is going on with this one? And today we are reading from Hosea, which is one of the minor prophets. It's a weird one, folks. Okay, so if you go home and you think, well, I want to read about this a little bit, go read Hosea and think, what? I mean, my guess is you probably won't get a real clear understanding and feel the grace and love of God right away because it has some pretty negative language in it, and it makes you feel like, what am I reading? What was this to? So today we're trying to talk about the prophets a little bit in the sermon, but also in a way that makes sense to us. And one of the things prophets do is they are truth tellers. And they're not always nice when they tell the truth. Sometimes they say a truth to a people in power or a person in power, and it's not always a nice word. Hosea, if you read chapter 1, it's not a nice word. But Hosea was upset because the leaders of the particular time were not being faithful to God. And so Hosea knew that the unfaithfulness of the leaders was causing pain in God's people. And so Hosea spoke out about it. So Karen, would you be willing to tell us about a time in your life when you spoke truth to power, when you felt like they weren't being faithful to God?
Yes, I will. First, a little backstory to this. We moved to New Prague about 6.5 years ago, and we moved from a very, very small town, a town similar to New Prague, where there was kind of an unbalance between the churches. A lot of people went to a certain church, and then like the overwhelming majority of the town went to a certain church, and then everybody else, including the Lutherans, were, a small portion of this church. I also owned my own business. I was an avid scrapbooker. I still am an avid scrapbooker, but I used to own my own scrapbooking home-run business. And so one way that I sought to meet people is by joining lots of organizations within this very small town. And so I knew lots and lots of people. I even became the president of the board of directors of the chamber. So knew lots of people. Also, I sent my kids to school at a private Christian school because when we first moved to town, Joe, our oldest, was just like a toddler. And then we got word that, oh, you need to send your kid to the school. You know, this school, this is far superior because it's religious based and it's Christian, and oh, you know, you need to go to this place. And the public school, oh, just poo-poo on the public school. And so that's what we did, because that's what we were informed, misinformed. And so as we go throughout school, of course I have to be the president of the PTA of this school. So
Karen Taylor being Karen Taylor.
so I just couldn't say no, you know, and it was a great way to meet new customers and new moms and be involved with what my kids were involved with. Then comes 2007. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was very young, I was 35, and it rocked my world. But you know what, I thought, it's just cancer, I got this, no problem. But I did let go of a lot of things. I let go of being the president of the chamber, I let go of a lot of other community groups that I was involved with. I had just recently become a den leader of the Cub Scout troop, or Cub Scout pack. Joe at that time was in 2nd grade, and so I decided to be the den leader for him. And so the only 2 things that I held on to while I was going through cancer was Cub Scouts, being a den leader, and being this PTA, because those are the 2 things that directly affected my family. You know, like I could make a positive impact in these organizations. The other stuff was just gravy. And so I let go of it. So everything was going fine and dandy. While I was going through my cancer journey, the parents of this private Christian school, it was not the same denomination as I was, and so I kind of felt like the outsider, so I was really shocked that they asked me to be the president of the PTA, because I'm like, I'm the most liberal Lutheran that you could meet, and so are you sure you want me as your president? So yep. So that was fine. Throughout my cancer journey, they surrounded me with love. They created a meal plan. When I got diagnosed, I went through 4 months of chemo, and they brought me meals 3 times a week, and so I didn't have to cook. They took care of John. My youngest at that time was 4, and so when I had to go to chemo, they would provide free daycare and play dates, and he didn't have any idea of what I was going through, you know, at 4 years old. So it was great. He just thought he got lots of these great play dates.
The church being the church.
The church being the church, this great, loving community that just surrounded me with love. Even though I was an outsider, they just treated me as one of their own. Then came this situation where there was a young, unmarried teacher that all of a sudden stopped coming to school. And you know how small towns are and small schools, the word gets out, she was pregnant and not married. And somebody on the PTA group emailed me and was like, Karen, what are we gonna do? And I was like, well, there's a school board meeting coming up. Let's go to the school board and see what they have to say. So I went to the school board meeting, hoping to possibly get some answers of what was going on with this teacher. She was an amazing teacher. She wasn't even my kid's teacher. She was a 5th grade teacher, first year out of college, first job, private Christian school. So no teachers union, nothing, no representation like that. So I went to the school board meeting. And me and 30 other curious people showed up, including the father of this teacher, who was all of a sudden mysteriously gone. And we were hoping to get some answers. But what we met was a very stoic and a very regimented school board that an administration that wasn't willing to even acknowledge that we were there. We were 30 people crammed into a very small meeting room. And we politely listened to this school board meeting, and then we were kind of like, wait a minute, we have some questions. And because we weren't on the agenda and we didn't follow protocol, they were not going to have anything to do with us. Finally, one of the school board members was like, wait a minute, this is like an elephant in the room. We gotta hear these people out. So the father of this teacher proceeded to read a written statement from her, and she proceeded through this letter to explain she was blindsided. She was brought into the principal's office with her and I'm going to call him the superintendent, and she was made to sign this form that she signed away her rights, that she had to leave. She literally left. Ironically, it was Ash Wednesday when she got fired. So she was literally here one day. She that night cleaned out her classroom with all her goods. Her students walked in the next day to an empty classroom. No explanation. Parents were furious.
But all because of the fact
that she was pregnant and not married. And I'm not saying that, yeah, you know, an unpregnant woman in a Christian school, yeah, that does raise some red flags. I was shocked on how the school handled it. So the school board meeting went from bad to worse. Once the dad read the letter and everybody, it was all kind of laid out on the table, emotions got very high. School board members were like, oh my, you know, it kind of was like the veil was like taken off and this ugly system was exposed. You know, this teacher was basically kicked to the curb. No mercy, no graciousness, no compassion was shown to her.
No health insurance.
No health insurance. She was basically fired, like terminated, like, see you later. And that shocked me. This loving Christian school that wrapped their arms around me, why did they not do the same to her? Ironically, this was February, so this was Ash Wednesday, this was February. She didn't have to come forward. You know, through this letter that was read, it was said that when she came forward with her story, she was told, everything will be okay, we'll take care of this.
Oh, she had been told that.
Yep, the principal and the administrator were like, it'll be okay, we'll take care of this. Well, taking care of it meant canning her and kicking her to the curb like she was trash. And that shocked me. And so I started getting very emotional, very upset. I didn't know where it was coming from. Many other people were very upset in this room. But I was like, you know, so I went home and I was just this gut-wrenching pain. And I'm like, I had no idea what this was. I was so upset. Couldn't.
Because you're president.
I'm the president of the PTA, and I'm like, it so went against what I grew up with as a Lutheran, and I was like, we're not perfect. You know, mistakes are made, and just the way the school was handling things. You know, this teacher, they could have easily been like, okay, we're gonna have to let you go, but let's do it in a smooth transition. Let's be transparent about this. Let's let you finish out the school year. You're not gonna show, nobody's gonna know. It'll be our little secret, you know?
But everything about it.
But everything about it was just wrong, the situation, the way they handled it. So I went home, I tried to explain it to my husband, but I was literally like sobbing, like, couldn't talk. And he was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but I have to do something. I have to do something. Didn't sleep at all that night, you know, cried, stayed up and just cried. Next morning I got up, got the kids off to school. John was in preschool, dropped him off at preschool at this same school that I just witnessed this horrendous action. And so I went home and I sat at my computer and I was like, well, there's only 30 people at this school board meeting. More people have to know about this. More people have to know the truth. So I wrote a letter, composed a letter, and I hit send. It was an email, and I hit send to a few close friends that weren't at this meeting. And within 30 minutes, my phone started ringing. And it was, you know, people who I considered my friends, and they were like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just telling the truth. I just laid out, I basically did a play-by-play of what happened at the school board meeting. And I exposed the hypocrisy of what they're teaching you. Jesus loves you. But only if you know, follow all the rules, and only if you're perfect. grace, no nothing. I was like, wow. You know, it was like, it felt like I was outside of the bubble of this Christian church and this school, and I was looking at it from a different lens, and I wanted people to see it from that same viewpoint. Not everybody was happy with me. There were I got a lot of, because I knew, okay, not only was I a business person, not only was I the president of the PTA and the former president of the Chamber Board of Directors, I was a doctor's wife. So there were people that knew of me, and I didn't know who they were, but they knew Karen Taylor. So
you sent this email.
And it just
spread.
blew up like crazy. Like, you know how New Prague has their New Prague Happenings Facebook page?
Yeah.
Imagine that in a super tiny town of 2,000 people, but just wildfire, like the grapevine. And it just flew like, yeah. I got emails, I got phone messages, I got letters in the mail, both good and hateful, very, very hateful letters. It was funny, the most hateful letters were coming from people who were anonymous. So I was like, okay, I have the courage to sign my name and be right here. Here I am. This is me and this is my truth and this is what I think is wrong with the situation. And you don't have the...
Yep, gotcha.
to be front forward with this? But come on, people. I honestly was waiting for a burning cross to show up in my front yard. That's how angry some of these people were. And so...
You were a prophet.
Yeah, I didn't feel like a prophet.
You told the truth.
I told the truth, but there was one day when I walked, shortly after this had happened, a girl is getting all this hate mail. What's a girl to do? I'm going to go shopping. And there was, my favorite store downtown was a jewelry store.
Okay.
And I walk in, and small town. And you can just tell, you hear the conversation as before you open the door, you can see people into the store, and they're all huddled around, and they're in this great conversation. I open the door, conversation stops, they turn and look at me, dead silent. Dead silence. I peruse the store as I do, didn't say a word. I mean, as a customer, you would think they'd greet me. Oh, hello, good morning. Everybody knew everybody in this town. I've been to the store numerous times. They knew me by name, first name. Didn't greet me, didn't. And it's like, oh God, they're talking about me. It was me. I was part of the conversation. So I left without buying anything that day. And shortly after, I made the decision that this school was not right for us, and so we...
Did the church, respond in any good ways to you?
Nope. Nope. I begged the principal to just make a statement.
Yeah.
Make a statement about this. Nope, didn't make a statement. Didn't address the parents of the 5th graders. Just kind of swept it under the rug, as they are so famous for. So, it just, and just the whole way they handled the situation was just so alarming and just hurtful. Not only to me, but the parents of those 5th graders. So that school year was very eye-opening. The news came down. Fox Channel 9 News came down. They wanted to interview me.
Fox Channel 9 came down to interview you?
They wanted to. I said no. They interviewed the teacher.
Okay.
And she gave us lots of statements. And then, for about 2 weeks, this town and this school was front page news. Letters to the editor for about a month, going back and forth and back and forth. And, this was wrong and this was right, and the church is this and the church is that. And finally, the editor of the newspaper was kind of like, whoa, time out, we're done. A month of letters about this subject, we're done. And he wasn't going to print anything more. At the end of the school year, 20 families left that school and went over to the public school. And it was great. My husband and I were public school kids. I don't know why I ever thought that this Christian public school was going to be better than whatever, but no, it was amazing and fantastic and very loving and warm. And I remember turning in my paperwork, and the secretary of the public school was like, "We couldn't wait for you to come over here." So I was like, "Thank the Lord, somebody wants me."
All right.
This liberal movement
you're talking, I'm thinking about this difference between the love of God and the rules of religion. And how sometimes the rules of religion get people confused on the love of God. Here's a situation where people didn't share the love of God because they were so bent on the rules of religion. But Jesus was all about sharing the love of God over the rules of religion. And I think that's what you did. You shared that this is what we should be doing. This is what the church should respond. So you get pushback, you get some praise. You, in my book, you experience what it's like to be a prophet. To say a true word to power because it was hurting God's people. So as we hear Hosea today, Hosea didn't say everything in a really nice way. Hosea wasn't very calm about it. Hosea said it like it is. And of course, Hosea received pushback. You know what that feels like?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I gotta ask, how did it end up?
So, luckily I was not on Facebook at the time because I joined Facebook about 2 years after this whole incident happened. And one of the first people that friended me on Facebook was this teacher. And she found me on Facebook and she just wanted to say, hey, we're okay. She was offered a job at a neighboring town and went on teaching. We're still Facebook friends today. And her daughter now is 10 or 11, doing great. Of course, the boyfriend dumped her, and so she's raising this child all by herself. But she survived, she went on, and I obviously survived and went on and did great things at the public school and continued to be a great den leader and eventually cub master in the cub pack that I was in, and carried on, but there was definitely friendships that were, the bridges that were burned and relationships that were severed. People who I thought were my friends were definitely not my friends. So yeah, I got really thick skin after that. Really thick skin. So there's not much that will rattle me anymore. I don't stick my neck out. I've never had a situation that has affected me as much as that did. Where it just almost made me physically ill to what I saw, where I was compelled to do something that strong. So yeah. But I still am Karen Taylor. I still will.
Yeah.
I will tell you like it is.
Yeah.
I really don't filter much.
But I gotta ask, have you shared this with a lot of people here in New Prague?
No, and that was the one nice thing. I think I shared this with you down in Houston. When we came to New Prague, nobody knew my story.
No one knew you as the one that
Nobody knew me as the
runners of the jewelry store.
Nope, nobody knew me as the witch who tried to take down this
Christian school.
This private Christian school, and yeah, it was great. It was great. So I could kind of reinvent myself. Although I really am not any different than what I was back in this other town. So.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for sharing. Let's give Karen a round of applause. So today, as we think about prophets, and if you look at the prophets in the Bible and you read about them, some things will surprise you. Hosea, like I said, you go home and read it, it'll surprise you. The words that But prophets are faced with a choice. Do they stay quiet when there's wrong things happening, and do they just kind of brush it under the rug? Or do they speak truth? Are they truth tellers? And prophets make that choice. It's not always the easy thing to do. You know what it's like to speak truth to power, to protect somebody who's being abused by that power. And it's not always an easy thing to do. There's consequences. But folks, we're not always called as Christians to always just be nice. Sometimes we have to make that choice to choose doing the right thing, to doing the Jesus thing, over being nice and quiet. And Karen, thank you for modeling what it's like to be a prophet for us today. Thanks for translating this passage. And thanks for encouraging us as we seek to try to do that ourselves. So as we wrap up today, I invite you to fold your hands, bow your heads, and let's have a prayer today. Gracious God, you are a great God of compassion. You are a God of grace. You are a God of love. And God, sometimes your church, this community, this institution seeking to embody your presence in this world, sometimes we get mixed up. Sometimes we choose the rules of religion over the love of Christ. And God, we ask for your forgiveness. We ask for your guidance as we seek to do the right thing. God, thanks for Karen's story. Thank you for her courage. Thank you for stirring up within her that courage to speak out when something was wrong. God, help us. Help us to think about how our faith calls us to do the same. When and where are you calling us to be prophets? When and where are you calling us to name the elephant in the room that something isn't right? So God, give us that courage, give us that guidance, give us that direction as your people on this earth. It's in Jesus' name we pray.